Hey guys, it's Katie, and I'm here today to do a review of Poland by James A. Michener. But before we get into this, I'd like to give you guys a brief little update on my life. So if you guys have been following me on Twitter, So I filmed this review, but it was much earlier than today. Or yesterday or recently. I finished it probably a couple of weeks ago. Today is August 16th, so it's been a little while, but yeah, I did finish Poland in August, and I really enjoyed it. But because I don't currently have a computer, everything's a little bit on delay, and so I will, this is up, but not when I finished it. Now I'm going to try and get into the actual book that I am reviewing, and that is Poland. I'm trying to figure out how to review this book still because it's kind of difficult since it literally covers about 700 years of Polish history, but I'm going to give it a try. So the best way I can describe this book is that it's a sandwich. Yes, you heard that correctly. I said it's a sandwich. And basically what that means is the first and the last chapters take place in, quote, current day, which when this book was written in the 80s, so current day for this book is the 80s. And everything in the middle is the meat or heart of the sandwich that helps you understand kind of what's going on in current day. So what's going on in current day is there are these, the book follows these three families. It starts with Count Lebonski, these nobles that make up the Bukowski family. And then there's a peasant family called the Buks. And so we get to see different aspects of life that way, so that was really interesting. But in present day, we find out that the Buks and the Bukowskis have some relationship somehow. They are related, they are kin. And that poses a very interesting thing because the Buks, who are the peasant family, remember, they are trying to form a farmers union because the people are starving, they don't have enough work, and it's just not generally a good time. They're trying to bring in the church and religion and different powers throughout the world, and there are all these news organizations that are there trying to get information and all this stuff. And it's, they leave and they're like, we'll come back in 4 weeks and have some more talks. And it's like, okay, cool. So then we literally launch right into Polish history. So the way that this book is split up, it starts with the invasions from the east, then goes to the invasions from the west, then from the north, and finally from the south. From the east, it was like the Mongols and the Tatars. Then from the west, it was the Teutonic Knights. And then from the north, it was the Swedes. And from the south, it was Austria, Hungary, Germany. So Poland's had a lot of it. He's been attacked on all sides. And then we have this long chapter that follows what's called the Golden Freedom. So I think it's like a time when they were free for a period of time. That chapter was a lot to absorb, so it's like still a little bit fuzzy. And then we get into a really interesting chapter, and arguably probably my favorite of the book, where they are having this party with some Austrian people. And they're talking about music and artists and things like that. And that's really cool because it's all kinds of stuff that I love. But yeah, it was really interesting because they're talking about things like the dance, the mazurka, and all these famous musicians like Chopin, and comparing them, one country thinks their musician's better than the other. It's just this whole sense of nationalism, which I think is really interesting. And then we launch into like 1600s, I believe. I think it's the Russian invasion at that point, and they finally start to come on the scene. And then we get into World War II, which is just so rough. and it was a very difficult but very, very interesting chapter for me to read. And then finally, we get to the last chapter, which brings us back to present day and all of the things that were happening at that point in time. This book was very, very informative, and it was also very, very heartbreaking and very difficult to read about, because, you know, I'm a history person. I love reading kind of things like that. Most countries have really tragic histories. Like, Russian history is incredibly tragic. It's some of the hardest for me to read. And Scottish history is also very, very difficult to read. But Polish history is also just super difficult to read, especially in this giant book. You'd be surprised. It's only 556 pages. It looks like it's 1,000, but it's really not. Go figure. But yeah, it was really rough to get through at times because of the things that they went through. And World War II was some of the most tragic parts of this book. And yet I found it really interesting and really captivating. But it is really dense, so you can only read, I mean, depending on your tolerance for things that are fairly dense, even when it's not like incredibly dense, I could only get through 30 to 50 pages on average a day of this one before I had to put it down. So I mean, if you are prepared to go in knowing that it's a lot of information and that it's really interesting and that it's really, really informative and great, but you're only willing to read a little bit of it a day, cool, you'll enjoy it. I think I'd highly recommend reading it anyway, because it's really fascinating to learn about history that you don't learn about in school. Because I know a lot about the particular events and the particular people that invaded the Polish area and kind of just a little bit about them, but just getting to see it in this specific kind of a setting was very, very interesting to me, and I really enjoyed it. The thing that I thought was really cool is actually, you know, you can see the cover and how it's got, you know, this picture of a castle on it and all that kind of stuff. But I really like when I took the dust jacket off, it's got this really cool symbol on the front. And I kind of want to know a little bit more about this particular symbol. I tried to look into it a little bit, but since I don't even know what it is and where to even start looking, except for maybe to try and type like Polish symbols or something like that. But I mean, it's really cool. I have a deep fascination for symbols and art and things, so this is particularly cool. Do a little bit of a close-up so you can see what it's all about. Oh, that's a little fuzzy. There you go. Interesting book, and it is historical fiction because a lot of the events and the people that he wrote about, particularly as the three families that I named, are fiction, but they're centered around bigger events that were actual events. And so I thought that, you know, that mixture was really, really interesting and really cool. And as I said, I definitely recommend this. I'm probably going to read other Michener books in the future. I just need to take, I think, a bit of a break between reading them because there's a lot to absorb. And yeah, I don't know if any of you guys have read any Michener books, but if you have, come talk to me about them and let me know. Even if you haven't read Poland, let me know what you thought about some of his other ones, because I've talked to a lot of people and several people think that this is his best work. But I'm interested in picking up some of the other ones as well. I really enjoyed this, and I definitely recommend it. Whether you're into history or not, I think it's interesting enough to read, especially since the things that happened at the end and the beginning of this book, you know, in the 80s, is kind of still going on now to an extent. But yeah, definitely an interesting read. definitely one that I'll remember for a while, and definitely one that I'd recommend. So yeah, that's about all I've got for you today. So as always, feel free to like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media. I have a Twitter and a Goodreads, which are both linked below. I also have other social media sites such as a second Twitter, a Tumblr, and an Instagram that's travel-centric if you'd like. And I will come back with another video for you guys again soon. Okay, bye!